You're listening to the Geekcast Radio Network of podcasts.
You've just jumped inside the pull bag. Join TFG1 Mike and the rest of the comic reading crew here at the GCRN as they make their great escape into comics. From DC, Marvel, IDW, Boom Studios, Zenescope, and more, we have everything you want to read right here. Transformers comics? Yeah, we cover that. He-Man? Yeah, sure. DC superheroes like Batman, Batgirl, Nightwing, and Batman Beyond? Yep. We have those too. How about TMNT from IDW and I Hate Fairyland from Image Comics? Yeah, we have all that here. Plus, so much more. It's all inside the pull bag here on the Geekcast Radio Network. So without any further ado, it's time to talk about the comics we are reading right now here inside the pull bag.
Hello and welcome to the pull bag. This is episode 397. I am, of course, TFG1 Mike. We are 3 episodes away from 400 episodes in this podcast. Holy crap, folks. 8 years, 400 episodes. Joining me is someone I haven't talked to, when I assume I haven't talked to him on a podcast in, at this point, 4 years, I think. I don't know. Whenever 2018 was, folks, because 2020...
2 years ago.
What? 2018? No. That was... anyway.
2020. It's 23, or, well, yeah. 3 years ago.
Yeah, 2018 was... when we did episode 307, which was I Hate Fairyland Volume 3, we're here to finish out the series with Volume 4. Man, I don't know how you felt about this thing, but when I read it, I'm like, I know this was written way before now, because obviously this came out a while ago, but I was like, ooh, a lot of this kind of hits home with what's currently going on, especially all of the Duncan Dragon stuff and the Postal Service. Oh boy. It's like...
Yeah, definitely.
It's like Skottie Young was looking into the future.
Although Duncan Dragon could have been one person to fix it all, really, you think, with his gusto, for sure.
You'd think. So did you have a hard time getting back into this since we haven't done it in a while?
It's been a while. I think I finished it previously before we did the recording, so it was going back, and the good thing about I Hear Fairyland, it is a pretty quick read, so I read not just the last 4 issues, but the few issues beforehand, just to kind of refresh where we're at, right. I to put myself in there, like, okay, yeah, this was where this is where the story was. I realized I never did finish this. I never finished the last issue, but I do really miss this book, and now I'm going back and reading it now. Skottie Young has moved on. He's doing probably the best work of his career right now, really. But there's this little part of me that really misses this type of Skottie Young, at least this art, this type of art from him, because he is really a primary writer right now with Strange Academy, and he just finished Middle West, which is probably his best book. But just this off the wall, kind of like Looney Tunes with an edge type of humor that I definitely really miss. And right now, it is like the perfect thing to read because it is, it's fun, it's light, it's goofy in the best type of way. Although it does get kind of dark. I was really curious how it was going to end all this because I was like, it's been this continuous journey. And I know when we first started doing this podcast, I Hate Fairyland in the first few issues, I was like, this is a great idea. I just don't know how long you can carry this out. And it ended up, I think, being 20 issues was kind of the perfect amount because I think it was able to reinvent itself enough, take the approach in different ways, and then finally realize, okay, and I think come to what I think was at least a pretty satisfying and justification of a final ending. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this was released August 29th, 2018. So they really were looking towards the future, even though no one knew what was going to be happening last year. But I love this. I didn't actually go back and read issue 15 or 14 or anything like that. I just went straight into this because I'm like, I think I remember where this was, but I didn't, because the way Skottie writes this, the way he crafts it, like, I completely forgot this was an Image Comics title. Completely, until I saw the giant eye in the creator, listing page here. Volume 4, Sadly Never After. As we've said, Skottie Young on writing, coloring, writing, and drawn by Skottie. Coloring done by Jean Francis Bay. I'm gonna screw that name up, I know. So, you've got these all these awesome creators on this along with Skottie and working on his universe, and it's just so fun. And we open with Gert in hell, and she's going up against her nemesis, and like, what do you got for me? How are you gonna make my life a living hell? I was not expecting the turns I was not expecting them to try to, I'm going to go home. Wait a minute, this isn't home.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. And you're right, this reads so fast, and because it's so good, it moves so well throughout the story.
Yeah, it was actually like that's kind of why I went back, because I was reading this. I'm like, wait, she wasn't home, and then I forgot that she kind of died.
Yeah, she died.
Yeah, so actually reading it fresh, I figured something was off, because I knew there was 4 more issues. So I'm like, she can't be back already. She's got to go back home. But that's again where I feel like it was able to keep this idea and further develop it, so it wasn't all just humor, because it was a tad bit of emotion there, where you do see her finally get home and finally just like the embrace with her parents, and then that quickly decay into the worst breakfast you can imagine, and then but instead of like souring and being sad about it, she's Gertrude, and she kind of fights through it to the point where she ends up getting kicked out of hell, or put in a different type of hell, because her real I Hate Fairyland ends up being her actual hell. So it was an interesting way of kind of putting her in this kind of purgatory type of situation.
Yeah, I love how she's like, is that all you got? You're just going to send me home? I want to go home. This isn't hell for me. And then the devil's like, oh, okay. All right, well then, I know what your real hell is, like you said. And, well, I am no fan of any devil, no matter, how many hockey games they lose. Go Bruins! Anyway, sorry, that's a timely joke, folks. No one will get it but me. I love the design on the devil in this, because I am a huge nut for purple and dark blue and the purple thing, and I love the design on this devil. It's so interesting and fun.
Yeah, it has almost a Marvel cosmic vibe to it, and like how the stars kind of illuminate his body, but he still has that growl of a face. So it maintains the cartoony aesthetic, but you can definitely tell he's a little evil. So yeah, I agree. It's a good character design.
Yeah, and I mean, what color goes best with, especially with how Skottie and the other artists are designing this. Like the panel where he's just laughing, and it's just a panel of him. His mouth is like a mile wide open. He's got his pink horns up there, his orange red eyes, and his mouth. And you see, obviously, the rest of him is like purplish blue. Like, what colors are going to go together? Like, you couldn't have a yellow devil, because obviously yellow, red, orange, that all, So, I mean, having a purple devil just really, really works.
Yeah, and it works definitely well against Gertrude and her bright green hair. So I think the first issue, the first issue in the trade, I think the colors also obviously play a big part in it too, because when you see her, like home life turn into this, like her parents turn into these monsters, the colors really get muted and darkened for a story. And usually this is like one of the brightest comics. It's like sugar rush. Yeah. Just for looking at the colors. So it made that return to I Hate Fairyland all the more jarring, because you're just bombarded with like every primary color you could imagine.
And then that last page is the devil in hell with all the red and the brimstone and the volcanoes, and him just holding the world in his hand. And I'm like, that is some of the best art I have seen in a long time in a book like this.
Yeah, I mean,
and there really is no other book like this. I mean, it's so good. Good.
But then that again transitions us back to the one thing I was a little confused by was that I thought he actually sent her to Fairyland, but he sent her into like a fake version of I Hate Fairyland.
Yeah.
That was one thing I didn't pick up on. But then we get Duncan back, and like you mentioned earlier, his part of the FPS, and like you said, it ends up being rather timely as of right now with all the
very timely with what's going on with the USPS and just all the mail packaging places, USPS, FedEx, UPS, and it just again the commentary. Like for me, what the most difficult part about the post office is, and this is before 2020 and coronavirus and all that, is the waiting in line. And I know now it's probably even worse, but that's my biggest problem with going to the post office is if I have to physically mail something that needs to actually have postage be put on it and that kind of thing. It's just standing in that line is what, and they comment on that in this. They don't comment on that, but they like, oh, what's the trench? Oh, that's the front counter dealing with the public, dealing with the customers. And I'm like, not all of the USPS customers are that bad.
Yeah. I think I went to I don't go to the post office very often. I don't have to. But I did have to I had to send out something for you recently because we had to return something from Amazon, and that was a journey and a half. But he ends up going through this, and then obviously going to the Wicked Witch's home, and then you find out what her plan was, which immediately backfires. What I found interesting about that story too was like that again showing kind of the range of Skottie Young, who has a very cartoony style, that kind of burned skeleton that he draws.
Yep.
It reminds me of like when I first saw his work. It was actually in cover work when he did a lot of covers for the Cable and Deadpool series that had more of that type of aesthetic. I'd like to see that he brings it out here and there, especially for like that moment where you need something like that.
Yeah,
as you're building up this final villain, who ends up actually, of course, being someone we
already
knew from the beginning, bringing it full circle.
Yeah, and like you said, you were having a hard time getting back into this, so you read, you tried to catch up with what happened in Volume 3. Yeah. For me, I didn't have a hard time catching up, even though I hadn't. I mean, I've thought about Fairyland the whole time that we haven't been able to get this done, kind of thing, because of life and scheduling and whatever, and just whatever. But it's one of those things where when the character shows back up, and I'm like, wait, please, Skottie, don't bring a zombie into this. That's the last thing. That's the last thing I need in my Fairyland comics is a friggin' zombie. And then I realize, oh, wait, no, it's not a zombie. It's, okay then. All right, well.
He does have a zombie kind of look to her.
Well, I mean, when she first appears, when the character, like that scene, that skeleton scene that you were talking about, that one panel, where it's like, what everything needs, and I'm like,
Did you when she first came, when Claudia first showed up, did you think it was her, or did you have any guesses, or did you think it was a new character?
I wasn't sure. I knew it was something bad because obviously Harabella is a witch and she does bad things, but I was not exactly sure until she actually kills the witch. I was like, oh, okay. And poor Duncan. I love that kid. Him in his dragon pajamas. I quit. I
do love the role he ends up playing in this end. He ends up being such a fun character. And he also kind of, you forget that he is part dragon, and he brings that out, when he needs to in this final chapter.
Yeah, he does, absolutely. Yeah, I don't think it was until, like I said, until she kills the witch And then the end of the issue, the end of 17, I hate Fairyland, because you think about what Claudia's been through.
Yeah.
Of course she was gonna, come to hate Fairyland, even though she used to be its queen.
Yeah. Like again, like I wasn't expecting her to come back. I wasn't really sure how this story was going to wrap up, but it does make sense.
Yeah,
that you would see, bring her back, since everything. And it's also interesting how it ends up getting so caught up in the machinations of. Well, before we begin to that, bringing back, I was going to say the machinations of all the different regulations and rules in Fairyland.
Right. Yeah.
But we see a return of Larry. With a nice homage to Hobbit, him trying to write down his adventures like he's Bilbo Baggins. I thought that was a nice little touch because but of course being a drunken flies and he's having a little bit of writer's block.
He's having a bit of. Why did I write down all of that? Oh, don't write that down. Why did I do that? Yeah, but it's just thank God he didn't make a reference to his 111st birthday. I'm sorry. That's the only Bilbo thing I ever remember is when he's talking about his 111th birthday in the first part of Fellowship of the Ring.
Like 12 hours of movie, and that's the one thing.
Oh, well, you know what? Okay, so it's funny. As of this recording, right now, all 3 movies of Lord of the Rings are on Hulu. I just looked. And I know this is going to shock you and shock everybody. I was half a second away from hitting play, and I'm like, all right, fine. I pay for Hulu. I'll finally watch it. I look at it, and I'm like, this movie came out in 2001. This movie is 20 years old. Oh, my God.
Yeah. Kind of crazy. Still holds up, though. I mean, some of the special effects are a little dated, but it's still impressive. If there's a time now to watch it, do you know what version was it? Was it the?
I don't know. I'd have to look and see, but I'm not sure. I'm sure it's just the regular 3-hour version. I don't think Hulu's gonna have. I don't think the studios are gonna upload.
Well, the extended versions I think are on HBO Max. Could
probably.
But anyways, yeah. So I thought that was a nice little reference of him being, the Bilbo Baggins of Fairyland. But then after that, we get introduced into all the the council of, not introduced, but brought into the council of Fairyland. And as I mentioned earlier, where we were reminded that yes, being a dragon does have its benefits, especially when you're trying to intimidate a giant tree.
Mm-hmm. Another
reference, of course, to Lord of the Rings and Tolkien. But which is funny because I never really picked up. I don't know if it's just because I was more aware of it, but I'm finding much more Tolkien references than I was. This being fantasy, they're always there, but it's always done in a tongue in cheek way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And yeah, so the tree thing, I was like, oh right, he does have dragon powers. Wow. And I dug that. I really, really dug that. And I love how we eventually do get 2 Larrys. And I kind of picked up on the whole that she's in some sort of time hell loop. So it isn't really Fairyland that she's in at first. It's hell Fairyland. It's Fairyland that, she really wants to escape from.
Yeah.
And like you said, them, Larry, I was her guide and whatever, and even though she didn't listen to me, she still is the one that can probably save us from Dark Claudia or whatever.
Yeah, I did like that when we after we get the scene with the council or whatever, and it goes into the next issue and it opens up with her, and it's, you think maybe that is she on this adventure that they went to her and now she's trying to get something to be Claudia, but no, it was also that she was in space, which she didn't really do before. Yeah. So that was kind of fun, like expanding it, like her going on these different space adventures to show that this is actually a universe within a universe, which then also makes you wonder if the devil's just holding an Earth how's it, where the planet's coming from, but it's magic. It all works in the end. But then we obviously get the reveal that no, that she is in this, this fake version of Fairyland just to torture her, and she's brought back out of it to Fairyland in order to save Fairyland, which is a nice way to change it. I did like her just breaking, and we do get some character growth here, like, and all the silliness and craziness. Like, you do finally see that after all this, she's learned to kind of listen and not go headstrong and everything. And it ends up paying off. But I did like her kind of just reading them the riot act about the insanity of all their rules. And as someone who does enjoy fantasy, I do think that is also very telling, because fantasy stories do often have all these. They can get so lost in their lore and it's in the world building. And I felt that might have been a little bit of a venting towards that as well. It's like, can we this is all, none of this makes sense. Can we stop trying to act like it does? I don't know if that's just, me projecting, but it did feel like some of that was in there, considering the source material.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I love the twist. I love, if this was, and supposedly I'm pretty sure it is, the end. I'm glad that Skottie gave Gert the character growth, because you can't leave a story in a good place, with your main character not finding some semblance of either character growth or some semblance of being at peace with the life that she's led.
Yeah. It I like that, like, her. Obviously, she's saving the world. We're saving this world, but her way to finally beat Fairyland wasn't necessarily through a quest per se. It was through just basically, coming to accept it and arguing her point with logic, which brought it to a conclusion. Which is when I was always wondering, like, how they're going to find an ending to this. It wasn't necessarily what I expected. Of course, they had that huge, battle. She's getting the hearts of the council and all that. But that wasn't necessarily to get her goal. That was to achieve their goal, which in turn lets her kind of finally get what she's been waiting for.
Yeah, and the fact that she, again, doesn't listen, or actually she does listen to Larry, and she doesn't kill Claudia, and she, like you said, throws it back in the council's face. Look, if I killed her, you'd still find a way for me not to go home. You'd still find a way to screw it up. So,
yeah,
you either, allow me to do it this way and go home, or else I'm going to defeat you all, kind of thing. What I miss about this comic, and I wish it was still going, whether they had I love the language in this comic. Like, we are an explicit podcast here inside the Pull Bag, but there ain't nothing like a good muffin fluffer, because Jesus, I just love that so much.
Yeah, especially how it's utilized in the lettering, because it's like it's called out and like highlighted in big and color. I said aesthetic a lot, but this book has such a consistent aesthetic from every piece. That is kind of why I think it works really well, because it feels like this fairyland in every single way, even the way people communicate and stuff like that has been a big reason why.
And so they finally get to a point where she's going to go home, and, she thanks Larry, and he doesn't get a chance to say, "You're welcome."
But before we get to that I have a question about you, because we do obviously get the big battle between her and Claudia.
Yeah.
I know you're not a fan of anime or manga, but and I think it's very purposeful. There was some major manga and anime vibes from this battle between them.
Oh yeah, her glowing and the
we get a lot of shorter panels. The fighting, it felt very much like to use the obvious reference. Dragon Ball Z meets I Hate Fairyland.
Yeah, no, I was fine. I mean, just because I'm not a fan of those genres.
Yeah,
I don't mind it if it's in comics. I mean, it's fine if people want to reference it. That's how they want to tell their story. Like the panel where Claudia says, "I don't need powers to kill you. My hate will do," and then she just punches her, and it's these dark contrasting colors with Claudia, and then the bright light colors. The glowing of Gert, and
she's gone Super Saiyan.
Pretty much. Yeah. She's over 9,000 right now.
Yeah. What I also thought was, have you read? I don't know if you've read Middle West, Skottie Young's.
No, I have not read that yet.
The reason I bring that up is because there's a character, one of the main characters in that. There's this clown monster, plays a big role in that comic, and in this final battle, Claudia turns into this gigantic cloud monster as well. And I was like, I wonder if that's where that idea spurred from, where it's like, okay, like, oh, I can. That's a great idea for some sort of character. Let me take that and expand it further. Because their design's much different, and Middle West isn't drawn by him; it's drawn by another artist. But it had me thinking. I was wondering if that helped transition him to his next book. And I would highly advise reading that book. It's a very different book. It's much it's another fantasy story, but it's not nearly as funny. It's much more dramatic based, more of like coming of age. But I was just curious. So
yeah. And I mean, she gets to go home, and she works at the IHF Inc.
So do you think in that was this? Because I was wondering, I'm like, are they hinting that this was all her just like daydreaming, or do you think it was really that's just her grown up after everything? Because it doesn't transition from her going to see her parents, but it transitions her as a I would guess 20-ish type of intern. So what was your thought on that?
I think she's 37 at this point. I think she's an adult. I don't think I think it might have been daydreams, but I prefer to think it's her in the future. Yeah. She's gone through all of this, but she's, basically in these last few panels, folks, we basically have, Peter, what's happening? We basically have an Office Space reference to the entire end of this thing until the very last panel where she's like, fuck Fairyland.
Just doing some TPS reports.
Yeah, exactly. I like it. I think it's cool. Do I want more from this series? Yes. However, I am perfectly fine with her being back home in the real world, and she's basically saying, fuck Fairyland, and just letting it be. Yeah. And just going on with her life and not having to worry about all the backwards things that Fairyland put her through anymore.
Yeah. I think, I could see potentially the Lost Stories of Fairyland one shots coming or something like that, where you had we had that fake Fairyland inside of Hell, where technically we don't know how long she was there. That might be beating a dead horse a little bit, but it's been 2 years, and I obviously Skottie Young's the hard part is he draws this as well, but I could see him saying, hey, why don't I let let some upcoming artists or something like that take their shot at it, maybe not like a ongoing or something like that, but a special issue here and there. I would not be against it. I do wish I read this in singles though, because then I typically especially with Image series, you often get that letter in the back, but for the volume I had, there wasn't, and just to kind of as a final goodbye to see what their thoughts are, if it's something that they would ever return to. But in this, I just read it, I think like you did in the Comicology digitally.
Yeah,
so that
there. Yeah. So. Yeah, as much as I've said this before recently on this podcast, I believe, in other episodes way back in January, because this will actually be the first episode of February. I've said that, yes, I love single issues for the chance for us readers to be able to write in And like if we wrote in on, let's say, issue 15 and it was 7 months until they published, not that it would be, but you know how comics take breaks. It was 7 months before they got to issue 16 where we would see our letter. That would be great and cool. I actually know my buddy Joe, who does TMNT with me. He's written several letters to the IDW TMNT stuff, and he's had several of his letters published. And I love single issues for that. However, for me, needing the story, I want the story all in one go. I don't.
You prefer binge watching versus the weekly TV watching?
Yeah. I mean, I still watch The Mandalorian Season 2 weekly, because how can you not? Because, oh my god, Baby Yoda danced on his head this morning. Don't spoil it! What the hell's wrong with you people?
Yeah.
Kind of thing. But, I mean, for comics, I just, like, especially if, like, we just wrapped up, last month we did episode 393 and 394, where we covered the new 52 Batwing series, where we had jumped on with Jimmy Palmiotti and Justin Gray writing it, where Luke Fox came in and became Batwing at the time. If I was reading that in single issues and I had to figure out where the Future's End stuff came into that, because it's all collected in the trade and it's all in its whatever order it's supposed to be in kind of thing. That's why I love the trades, the whole story more than just having to figure out where to get stuff and where to go for stuff and whatever. And honestly, like for me, like I can't do physical copies anymore. I just can't. It's not that I don't want to. It's just the way my eyes are, the way my vision is, I can sit here in front of my computer and use Comixology Guided View or even DC Universe Guided View kind of thing, and it works for me.
Yeah, I get that. I comics is one of those things where I feel like it's basically like comic fans are one way or another. You have those weekly warriors that go every week. I'm one that does everything. I do get weekly books. I read physical. I read digital. I consume in all different ways. I don't know if I go different back and forth, because if it's something that is like bigger formatted, because I read a lot of fanographics, like graphic novels. Their formats are different. They're either really oversized or small, or I find physical copies better. But for single issues, I think I actually prefer, because it's easier to carry an iPad than like trying to carry like 20 or 30 physical copies of a comic around. It's a little harder. Plus, you don't want to damage them. But
and that's the other thing with reading comics. And I know this is kind of, and we'll get back to Hate Fairyland here in a second, but it's one of those things where, like, for me, I have a, I don't know, 24, 27-inch monitor, whatever. It's plenty big for me to be able to see with. I have optic atrophy with nystagmatism. Optic atrophy essentially is nerve damage. There's no LASIK that could ever fix my eyes. There is no surgery currently, and there hasn't been for the last 40 years, that will fix nerve damage to the back, to your optic nerve. So for me, I'm more like I need it in my face. You always hear about us kids in the 80s where we were 2 inches away from the TV. I literally at times had to be 2 inches away from the TV in order to see the damn thing.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where I could sit here, and again, I absolutely love Comixology's Guided View, because I don't have to zoom in on it. It takes me where it needs to go. It shows me what I need to see. There have only been since we've been doing this podcast for the last 8 years, there have only been maybe 7 times in 8 years where I've actually had to take it off Guided View and actually use the zoom keys on it. But everything else that I've read through Comixology, everything we've covered in this podcast up to this point, has been an amazing, amazing journey. And I'm actually going to be going back and redoing some stuff that we did back in the beginning, because I remember back in the beginning, the reason why I didn't like certain things is because I was reading it in print and not digital. So it's going to be interesting, folks. Very, very interesting. I've got a huge year planned for the pull bag. Okay, I hate Fairyland. Okay, what were you going to say? Sorry.
I was just curious. So overall, I mean, obviously when we talk about this book, we really praised it.
Yeah.
So is this? I know you've obviously read a lot of comics. In the pantheon of your favorite books, how high does this rank up there for you?
if I was making a top, let's say top 10 comic series list, like actual just series, this would at least be in the top 10. Maybe at number 10, I don't know, but I love this series. I think it was so great. It was so interesting. It was so fun. It's funny. I've actually been going back and listening to the old episodes that we did, because I'm actually going to end up linking them all in this podcast, since this is our last I Hate Fairyland episode, since the series is no longer running. And like you said, who knows what Skottie may want to come back to things at some point and whatever else. And I'm sure Image will be more than happy to do that with him and all of that. But no, I mean, this series was super fun. It's nothing like any other I remember when we first, I think it was you that suggested this to me, 3-4 years ago, whenever it was, and I'm like, okay, cool, I'll check it out. And I checked it out, and I'm like, oh, this is nothing compared to everything else we were doing at the time in the pull bag. And I'm like, oh, we got to cover this. This is cool. And I still feel that way. I still enjoy it. If I'm recommending people, like if I'm recommending a new comic reader to comics, I'm like, pretty much anything by Kyle Higgins, but let's say Hadrian's Wall, Cowl, his Nightwing run on New 52, whatever. But, other comics like I Hate Fairyland, the Transformers stuff from IDW, the Turtles stuff from IDW, that kind of stuff, I would recommend that to anybody. And this would be right there with it.
Nice. I'm glad you really enjoyed it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. All right, so 0 to 5, what are we going to give a Volume 4 for I Hate Fairyland?
I would give it, I think, a 4.5 to end it all off. Because like I said, I thought it came full circle really well. There's really nothing, no negatives for me to say. And as I mentioned, I think the biggest thing is it knew when to end. I don't know if the ending was like all that amazing, in the sense of it was a huge revelation, but I thought it was fitting for the story well enough. So that might be
it was fitting for the story and the character. Yeah,
maybe not a perfect 5, but this is like the perfect read right now, with everything, with the world on fire, escaping into I Hate Fairyland. Actually, that could be kind of funny though. Thinking of how to continue this series, seeing her being in the world in 2020 and thinking, you know what, this is Fairyland, even at its worst, would be better than this. But yeah, so if you're looking for something quick and fun and easy to read, enjoyable, and if you enjoy Skottie Young's art, and I think most people do, especially if you enjoyed his Wizard of Oz stuff, this is like that, but obviously with more of a, I don't say Ren and Stimpy, it's more like Looney Tunes, but with a harder edge,
Yeah.
So, great. It's very good.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's very, very cool. And the cool thing is that I was not going to do this, but I think it's very cool that they have done this. I looked at the I Hate Fairyland stuff on Comixology, and I'm like, oh, they have omnibuses now for this series. And I'm like, oh, I would have, not that we would have done this back in the day, but for basically, at least right now, just over $20, you can get book 1, which is issues 1 to 10 with exclusive extras, and then book 2 is where's book 2? Great. Book 2 is the same price, $20.49. So let's just say just over $20. And it has the I Hate Fairyland 11 to 20 and the I Hate Fairyland Free Comic Book Day special that they did, plus exclusive extras. So you can get this whole series for just under $40 digitally and get extras in it and everything else. And I'm sure these omnibuses are in local comic shops. I'm sure you can get them there as well. But it's one of those things where that's cool. Originally when we did this series, we were doing it issue by issue. Yeah. And then I'm like, oh, let's just do it by trade, since the trades are 5 issues a piece. And I mean, it's taken us no time to do this discussion. So it's not like it's that big of a thing, but it's oh, very, very cool. And it's just, again, so fun. So very much fun. Absolutely. What
would you give it out of a 5?
Oh, right, me. I forgot. I always end up forgetting the stupid rating. Not that the ratings are stupid, but yeah, I'm right there with you. 4.5. There's nothing really here that. Usually, for me to take a half point off or even a point off, it depends on the art. Like if there's something in the art I don't like, or if there's something that happens within the story that's like that's kind of eh. But like you said, the story is basically giving Gert an ending, whether it's happy or not. Her story is coming to an end. I mean, like you said earlier, they could do like Hidden Stories of Hell or something, like when she was stuck in the time loop hell. They could do a Duncan Dragon I Hate Fairyland story with whatever Duncan's doing now, kind of thing. I think that would be kind of cool, using him and using Larry and do like, I don't want to say a buddy cop thing, but something like that. But yeah, 4.5. Absolutely dug it and think it's great.
Awesome.
So what have you got going on? Because I know you're doing a lot of stuff over on our website at geekcastradio.com, but what else you got going on too?
Yeah, mostly doing written articles at the moment. A lot of I'm trying to do some like weekly top 10s of my favorite comics, most anticipated comics. Probably my favorite article I do right now is I try to pick out my favorite comic book panels of the week, just like the best moments, and trying to keep up with that. I also, if you're looking for comics to get into, probably the biggest thing I did recently was my top 100 comics for 2020. That's at the site, and I've done that the last 6 years. So there's, five years. So there's about 500 comics if you want to look for something. Check out those lists at Geekcast Radio. Yeah, most of my content has been mostly
written stuff
at the moment. So,
but it works, and it adds something to us, and it adds something to our website. So thank you for all of that. I don't know what Dan and I are going to do in the future. I have no idea. We'd have to have a conversation about that off air and what we're into and what we like and what we kind of want to cover here in the future, kind of thing. Coming up next inside the pull bag, we've got Transformers Beast Wars #1. Steve Megatron and I are going to cover the new IDW Beast Wars series individually, issue by issue. So I'm still getting singles, folks. Like, I don't want to wait. He doesn't want to wait, and I don't want to wait. So, and that gets us content for all things Transformers. And then after that episode 399 will be Radiant Black #1. My friends Ed and Kendra Hale are going to join me on that new series. That's Kyle Higgins' new series, and I'm really stoked about that series. It looks so good. Have you seen the trailer that they did?
I have not.
Oh, I'll have to send it to you off air. It's a really cool comic trailer with this song called Radiant put behind the thing, but very, very cool. Cannot wait for Radiant Black. And then episode 400, folks, I'm not sure what I'll be doing. I'll be doing something. So if anybody that has been listening for the last 8 years that wants to send in MP3s of them telling us why they like us or why they don't like us or what they think we should be reading next, kind of thing, you can do that. Send to feedback@geekcastradio.com, subject line TPB 400, and we'll get those in episode 400. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Fun little series, nice ending. I love that they brought all the characters back. Kind of sucks that the moon is still dead, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
I remember.
Can't bring everybody back, I guess.
No. I remember back in 2018 when we were reading that, I was like, she killed the moon. Oh, man. That was so cool. So fun. All right. Where can the people find you online, sir?
I'm on Twitter at DXO_Dan or on Instagram at Comic Concierge.
Awesome. I'm at TFG and Mike. You can also follow at the Pullbag as well as at Geekcast Radio for all the network updates. Make your great escape into comics, and we will catch you next time here inside the Pullbag.
You've just heard the latest episode of The Pullbag, the GCRN's first comic review and discussion podcast. There are several ways to get in touch with us and leave feedback for the show. You can visit the website, geekcastradio.com, where you can comment on the episode and all of our different podcasts. You can rate and leave a review for the show on iTunes. Be sure to leave us feedback. Become a fan of us on Facebook. Facebook.com/thepullbag. Send us an email, feedback@geekcastradio.com. Follow us on Twitter @thepullbag and @geekcastradio. So until next time, make your great escape into comics and unleash the geek in you.